All right, welcome in, Cowboys fans. Did Cowboys owner Jerry Jones hint that he sees Joe Milton as the next Cowboys quarterback on the Cowboys preseason pregame show on The Fan? Because he's not talking about Joe like he's a backup. He's talking like he's Dak's replacement in waiting. Let's do this. No. Let's not do this. Let's do this.
The only thing else I got to say is, how about them Cowboys? Yeah!
All right, welcome in. I'm Gavin Dawson from 105.3 The Fan, home of the Cowboys, 2 to 7 every weekday with the G-Bag Nation. And with me, as always, is the all-academic SEC lineman from Kentucky. Here he is, New Bear Lisnowski. Cold Bear's coming up, buddy. How the hell are you?
How many of those can I have during the show? That's really the question I'm the most concerned with.
Back in the day, G-Bag Nation evenings, when we did 7 to midnight, it was 3 beers per hour max. So I'd say you could get in at least 3 here in our, 40, 45-minute show, whatever we usually do.
Challenge accepted.
Joe Milton being here, I once had 100 ounces of cold beer in 30 minutes in my first year at 105.3 The Fan. It wasn't part of hazing. It was my own idea. But, hey, shoot, go for it, buddy. Joe Milton being here, is fun, but I think the big picture is it's more about Dak than Joe. Like when in 2015, Romo got hurt again, they had Jamil Showers on the roster. They drafted Dak Prescott, and the idea was, let's see what happens. We have a guy whose play might be on the decline, and he is now injury prone. We have to at least give ourselves a chance. We're not ready to spend a 1, but damn it, we're ready to spend a 4 in the draft or trade a 5 for a guy like Joe Milton. And, I just wonder, how you look at it. Is this the right time? Is this the right asset allocation? And do you believe, look at this quote from Jerry Jones. I didn't see this over the weekend until, I guess, Monday, but this happened on our pregame show Saturday night. I was just out of town. Kid had a soccer event. Said, I really have to pinch myself that we got him after the last game that he had up there starting for New England. He was with Christy Scales, does a one-on-one with Christy Scales every pregame show. He says, I'm just excited we had a chance to get him, and he hasn't disappointed. We're just more and more encouraged by what we're seeing. And I know you and I both liked some of the stuff we were seeing from Joe at training camp, New Bear.
I was really impressed in Oxnard. I thought he had total command of the offense and everything they were asking him to do. One of the things that really stood out to me was him a couple of times even resetting things, taking full use of the play clock, right? Breaking the huddle quickly, getting the call in quickly, getting to the line, recognizing that something wasn't right with all the pre-snap motion that they're using on almost every play, getting guys in the right place, killing plays at the line. He looked to be in total control. And again, the practice is a much more controlled environment. There's a script that you talk about. You know what you're going to get into. You're mentally prepared to do, this 1, 2, 3 things throughout the course of that session, but also in individual periods, right? As you're going through, goal line is this script, right? Midfield is this script. Coming out is this script. And I think that's different than what he struggled to get in the flow of the game. On top of being too amped up, in practice, everything is a little bit more controlled, a little bit more slowed down, and he knew exactly what he was getting into. And the control factor, not just of the arm, the touch, and throwing to GP and CD. Let's not throw that out the window too. Throwing to your guys who are going to make you right. I was really impressed with Joe Milton in Oxnard.
He has done a lot of good stuff, and he's got an incredible highlight reel coming out of Oxnard. But again, I do think maybe this video, as much as it's about Joe, is also about Dak, who had another interception today, a linebacker undercutting a route. And there's the Marshawn Nealon one. That's not the one I wanted to show you. I actually wanted to show you a different one, and I'm going to do that. That's actually how he opened training camp. Okay, there's been a lot of interceptions. The point I want to make here, New Bear, is when Dak had healthy Tyron Smith and Zach Martin and Travis Frederick and Doug Free and Ron Leary, he was outstanding. Rookie year 2016. And as his career has gone on, that offensive line deteriorated, and now it's totally gone. His near MVP year of 2023, it was Tyron Smith's last all-pro year. Zach Martin was still Mr. No sacks, no penalties, maybe a couple of pressures throughout the regular season. The offensive line is different. And we saw that level of offensive line in 2022 when he led the NFL in picks. And we saw that level of offensive line last year when he led the NFL in turnover-worthy play. I do think as much as Dak fans and Dak stans have had a legitimate excuse to be a big fan of him throughout his career, in 2 out of the last 3 years, the Dak critics are starting to look more and more right, that he needs a near perfect incubator of weapons and offensive linemen to even get to the divisional round and lose horribly.
Yeah, when we talk about the best of the best, right, you talk about the guys who if you blitz them, they kill you. And then if you sit back in zone, they just pick you apart. Everyone goes there with Brady and his surgical precision. And then he also had that ability where when you came after him with one more than he could account for, he killed you over the top. And what you're talking about with Dak, when you're setting him up with those all-pro offensive line and playmakers on the outside, is that perfect situation. Or this is the clip from today, right, with Sam Williams.
Yep.
You and I went back and forth a little bit on Twitter with this, where I think he never sees Sam Williams. I think this is a little bit of James Harrison getting Kurt Warner in the Super Bowl, where you just never see the guy. And I even said on Twitter that he was invisible by design, by the alignment, and Dak just never sees him, let alone expecting him to buzz the flat. I mean, this is James Harrison going 100 yards and arguably the greatest, Super Bowl defensive play of all time kind of situation. And I think he's expecting the guy to be wide open, and you got a guy buzzing the flat. Aaron Rodgers' first pass of camp in Pittsburgh was intercepted, and he had eyes only for DK Metcalf. He wasn't going to see anybody else on the field, let alone.
Yeah, Dak did not see anybody else. I mean, you can see he's looking out there waiting for the receiver to break so he can, zip the ball in there with perfect timing. And that's a common denominator with his interceptions.
Right. And added to that here, he's also staring it down. He
wants to be on time.
He's already looking left. He stays left. He never looks off. He never even one of the things that you want to see with the veteran quarterbacks, especially in a situation like this, even when it's bang, bang down on the goal line, there's always a second window where if the guy isn't open right off the snap, then he comes clean, 3-5 yards later, that next pat of the ball, that next heartbeat later. And what you would want to see is him give a look off and then come back to his guy when he clears again. I'm just saying that I don't think he expected him to be anything but free from the snap.
Okay, so it is How About Wow right here. Thanks for checking in with us on the podcast. If you're enjoying it, please like the video. Consider subscribing and check out our written words. Get all of our socials and everything at howboutwow.com. I think it really defines what the Joe Milton acquisition is about, though, and it's more about finding a backup improvement, because you don't need that, right? You had Cooper Rush, who in 2 extended stints has been above 500. Now, he does play boring football, so if this is nothing more than, hey, if we got to go to the backup, he can't be that boring. Like, Cooper Rush put me to sleep in some second halves, even as the Cowboys were trying to hold off and win games. It was just like, wow, bro. So you get more entertaining in losses if Dak does get hurt. But I think Jerry's quote indicates this is much more about, the upside. And the team is essentially prospecting, trying to find their next starting quarterback here. And this just happens to be months before the Cowboys are going to have an option they can exercise on Dak in March. We actually talked about this in depth a couple of months ago. That there, if healthy, there will be an option the 5th day of the league year if they want to move on from Dak Prescott. So you have the interceptions, you have the injuries, you have the full boat of this contract. What if he stays healthy and plays pretty good, but you're like, wow, with this kind of supporting cast, he can't even get us to the playoffs, New Bear. Because that's something Tony Romo was unable to do 2011, 12, and 13. But what he did do is he made every single one of those games relevant. Every year in week 17, they were playing essentially to win the NFC East or get a wild card spot and make the playoffs. What if Dak with this supporting cast doesn't make the playoffs and doesn't even keep you relevant in 17 games? I think in that situation, they might just be willing to move on and make a cap decision on him from there.
Well, especially because you're talking about $1 million flyer to find out if Joe Milton is the man, right? And that eases the kicking the can, that eases the dead cap, that eases the concerns of the salary cap ramifications. And when you look at everything that Joe Milton is, where you talk about a guy entering age 25 who still hasn't played a lot of football, who still is upside, who still is potential, because you come back to 6'5", 245, 455, 85, as in yards that he can throw the ball. We all saw what he missed and what he struggled with. We all know that the touch, the layering. Let's not forget that when Steve Young came to the 49ers from Tampa, if his career was only judged in what he did not do in Tampa, we would never be talking about Steve Young, Super Bowl champion, MVP, passing titles. Is he actually better than Joe Montana? Joe Montana shipped to Kansas City for Steve Young. Steve Young became Steve Young. He learned how to be a full-rounded quarterback. Brett Favre, for all his warts, same exact type of thing. Like, as hard as he threw the ball, John Elway, as hard as they threw the ball, they had to learn how to run the Shanahan and the West Coast schemes, and they did it their own way, right? They were able to kind of brute force some of that stuff a little bit different than a Steve Young. But all I'm talking about is development and growth and evolution and becoming like the best quarterback version of your quarterback self. And for Joe Milton, that's still all in front of the young man.
Yeah, and the best version of himself, if he can get there, would just be a sight to behold. You know, I think you'd be looking at a player, you know, in the Cam Newton mold. You know, and if he gets there, I will celebrate it. And as much fun as it is to talk about Joe Milton's potential, and I think it's, you know, more as an athlete that can pass, as a guy who can, you know, command a pocket and make decisions. And if he wants to make that mental switch at some point, I think it would greatly increase his chances of becoming a legitimate starter. Right now, the way he's approaching the game, I would say if he does play this year, he will convince the Cowboys it's time to draft another player next year if they do want to move on from Dak.
You've talked a lot about the perfect scenario that Dak needs, right?
Yeah.
because of Joe Milton's feet, he doesn't need the same things that Dak does. And because of his arm, he's not going to play the same way that Dak will. And when you talk about George Pickens in particular, what I always want to come back to with the reason you talk about the pre-snap motion and why it's so important for Joe Milton to know how to reset if something isn't right. And what impressed me in Oxnard is you've talked about the one clip where it almost kind of looked like he didn't understand the offense at all. And you're talking about a very complicated scheme. You're talking about a team that they're moving and they're doing a lot of different things. It's really more of a deception element where they're trying to package a handful of things in a million different ways. And oftentimes that can be as confusing, if not more, than trying to actually do a million different things, because, you know, in your head, you're like, oh, well, this looks right, or this seems to be right, but is it really right? And then you're thinking about it, right? But the thinking stuff into the first preseason game that we really were killing the kid for, and that he got raked over the coals on the socials, is missing guys wide open. So, you know, the scheme is going to get guys wide open. And then Pickens is a guy who, regardless of scheme, is always bleeping open, right? So the same way it's Dak needing all these things, that's mitigated somewhat by the athlete that Joe Milton is. The picture that we would get, I would argue, when you talk about Tony Romo entertainment, that it would be that entertaining or more, to the tune of them at least being willing to bet on one more, meaning season, where you kind of use Joe Milton at $1 million per as the bridge to find out how many picks you need to spend on the future of your franchise.
I think that becomes a fascinating conversation. You know, like, where would you take a quarterback in the 2026 draft if you decided to move on, or would you rather still roll with Joe Milton? I think it depends on how many reps he gets this year, how many games he appears in, how many snaps. I mean, if he plays in 8 games and every one of them is objectively horrible, then you move on. You know, but if it's just a couple of games and one of them looks like week 18 last year against Buffalo, then I think maybe you hold off and say, we'll get in the 2027 class and maybe it'll be an Arch Manning draft. But there's a number of good quarterbacks coming up. If I have a top 10 pick in 2026, I would want to take advantage of that. But I think for Joe Milton to avoid that, he needs to become one read quarterback, like they have said about a number of guys early in their careers. Oh, that guy's not good. He's a one read. Well, they went 13-4. He was a one read quarterback and he was busting your ass all Sunday. Maybe it's not a traditional drop back kind of guy, but I mean, Jalen Hurts is a damn good quarterback because of his legs, and I think we're perhaps more willing to accept that as part of quarterback greatness than at any point since 1960.
Yeah, and the interesting part about it that I always come back to with Milton is that he doesn't want to run. He wants to move to then throw, and the run is only when I'm across the line of scrimmage, and if I throw it now, it's a penalty. And when you go through the machinations of quarterback development, that is a great thing because he's not just going, the first read isn't open, I got to go. I got to make something out of this.
Well, that's how you want guys developing, right? Like they say in soccer, you want to develop as a possession-based team. Our touch is clean. Our heads are up. We're reading. We're picking out the open player. When you can't execute against the other team's midfield or defense, it's time to pick your head up and boom it, right? It's time to pick your head up or put your head down and try to dribble through everybody because like a precision passing coordinated attack is just not good enough to beat this defense. So now we need more drastic measures to try to individual effort our way to a win.
Right. The thing that's going to be really interesting about this, like you said, is what are we talking about in terms of reps? Because if Dak were to go down in week 7 with an ankle and we get 4 to 6 weeks and then into the bye, you get a situation where you're seriously talking about, has Milton played his way into a space where he's winning and he's got the hot hand and we roll with this guy? That's a different conversation than Dak has a little bit of hamstring tightness. We're playing the Bears. They're terrible, or whoever the team is that you feel like you can get by for a week and then Dak comes back in and gets back to doing the damn thing. If there's a catastrophic element and you're talking about you used 8 relatively half the season as the litmus test, you're going to get your answer one way or the other because you're going to have to see him build on success and respond to adversity.
It's so fun. I should have done a better job here finding more plays, but it is really fun to watch Joe Milton, some of his best. That was a completion there to Jalen Cropper. Nice little RPO action. And there are so many great passes. I just think when things go off schedule and he's got to try to figure it out on the fly, or he's got to go to multiple reads, that's when the decision-making just hasn't been there. I think that's why he didn't play in college. I think that's why he didn't play more for New England. And I think that's why he struggled so much. Like so much of this success in training camp, let's be honest, New Bear, is happening against a pathetic Cowboys defense. I'm going to find more highlights. I'll talk about that.
He's not just throwing to GP and CD and Fergie. He's throwing to them against backup and street free agent cornerbacks. He's throwing them to basically 28-year-old rookies, like special teams guys who are playing because they're the only guy available. And there is something to that. What we're maybe glossing over is the confidence that exists because of that. And now in a preseason situation where it's backups on backups, he feels like he has to be more perfect as opposed to having the margin of error with his guys, with the ones, with the 88 club, with always bleeping open. I mean, you look at this and you think about that in practice and why you don't see that, matriculate to the games. In one preseason game where the kid's too amped up, the one thing that you do see when you go back is that it's on a line, but it's on the right. It's in the right direction of the right guy who's open. It's not like he threw a laser cannon rocket ball to some dude who's covered by 3 guys wearing the other jersey. He's just got to throw the change up.
That was kind of like throwing on air. That coverage was just so bad. And that's to Josh Kelly, a third round quarter or a third string depth chart guy there. So right. Yes, I do find this thing to be very interesting. I think it's all incumbent upon how well Dak plays, and the interceptions last year, for the first time in a while, he had to play against a bad offensive line, and the division got better. Washington no longer a patsy, and Philadelphia is significantly better than you. And now this year's schedule could be, it's difficult to say for sure, but based on last year's record, this should be a top 5 most difficult schedule. Your offensive line continues to be in transition. Is Tyler Guyton better? Probably, but by enough? You know, you got a rookie right guard. You know how much pressure is coming off Terrence Steele. You really have one offensive lineman, Tyler Smith, who's on the level of the guys that he had 5 of when he came into this league. And I think as the offensive line has gotten worse around him. So I guess I say all that to say, I think this is going to be a take your medicine type of year for the Dak, real strong believers out there, you know, as far as points and turnovers.
When we talk about bad Dak plays from last year before he got hurt, you always bring up the Saints game, and we show the really, really, really bad picks. And I always talk about, well, hey, scoreboard. Like, let's put some context around this. And one of the things that's really interesting, you know, when you think about year to year, week to week, team to team, you know, the Saints came out with their hair on fire last year, and then they fell off a damn cliff. And Derek Carr is now retired. And we're talking about, you know, how much of a rebuild and how that might be one of the worst rosters or one of the worst quarterback situations in the league.
And the Cowboys made them look like a Super Bowl team.
But at that time, Derek Carr was still the guy that we were making excuses for, the same way, you know,
I think he scored 40 points 3 games in a row. I mean, he was on fire.
Carolina to open, Carolina no good. Cowboys defense no good, right? And you can talk about, again, context. And so when we look at this and we say Dak yay, Dak nay, Dak's going to get the benefit of the doubt if healthy for 18 weeks. Where this gets interesting is hamstring tightness. Where this gets interesting is if they do come out and drop opening night to the defending world champs and sleepwalk into week 2 and get hit by a Jackson Dart. Like then where does the cliff exist where almost regardless of how Dak is or is not playing, the team needs a spark. The team needs to change.
I think the cliff is, do you play exciting football? You know, and can you win enough to keep us in the conversation? If not, but, you know, I wanted to get a point of clarification in with you here, Newberry, if you don't mind. Do you feel like it's a lock Dak will do that if he's healthy?
I feel like if Dak's healthy, I think he has a very successful season, both for the team and for fantasy owners, because of the weapons. You're talking about, forget win-loss. We're talking about exciting brand of football. We're talking about games where you're going to have 300, 400 yards, 3-4 tutties. You might have 2 or 3 going the other way. It might be a shootout where, you know, you're talking about agonizing gut punch type of losses, but you're walking away from the game going, Dak still got it. What I'm talking about is if you go into week 2 and sleepwalk into Abdul Carter and company, and Dak looks like he's 45 and he's done. Like, what are the mitigating circumstances that change the way you think about QB1 and D4K?
I think I'm already there. I would have to be surprised the other way, that Dak comes out and has a great year in this situation, because I think if you speed him up, he is not going to see, just like in the interception today to Sam Williams, he's not going to see people. I don't think he's accurate enough. I don't think he throws enough with anticipation early in the play. He's always had an issue being a ball holder. I don't think he will have enough time to trust his eyes eventually. He will start seeing ghosts. And this all comes back to the run game. I've been talking about this for 5 years. If you're going to invest in Dak with that big second contract and now the third contract, you better give him great protection. And if you miss on offensive linemen, you better go trade for a good one. You can't just say, well, Tyler Biotish is our center. Sucks that he's not as good as Travis Frederick. Oh, Terrence Steele's a pretty good right tackle. I guess we're going to give him $18 million because he's good enough to be a starter. No, not if Dak's your quarterback. You know, maybe if Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen's your quarterback, that's good enough. Maybe if a Joe Milton with, great processing speed and accuracy is your quarterback, that could be good enough. But what this, 4 years has showed, where Tyron Smith is in and out of the lineup and Terrence Steele's been your right tackle, Biotish, and now Cooper Beebe at center, is that you can bet on it. I will know for a fact. So this comes down to can you dictate with the run game? And Dak used to be able to by himself. Dak would just say, okay, you want to clog and cover on me? You want to sit and cover 2 shells? Watch this. I'm going to run for 12 yards again, and I'm pushing you out of bounds when I get there. But, he's not that player anymore. So can you get a dominant running back and a dominant offensive line? Then I will expect Dak to damn near look like an MVP.
We've talked a lot about the 9 weeks headed into the bye, and how this team needs to be 6-3, 7-2 to put themselves in position to be able to deal with weeks 12 through 17, the condensed schedule, the holidays, and get themselves to a place where Revel, Overshone, and company can come back, buy themselves time to not have to rush guys, and get their help, get their health toward a playoff push, toward a division championship in a best case scenario for 2025. What I was asking about just a minute ago is the opposite of that. What is the worst case scenario? Because you throw out for a second that Ben Johnson's been mad at his mom for how bad the Bears first team has looked and the expectations he has coming out of Jared Goff and all those weapons, what Caleb Williams should be able to do. What if the Bears don't suck? What if the Packers and all these young wide receivers hang a 40 burger on you and you're staring down the Jets as week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the first opportunity for you to win a damn game? What if Justin Fields runs all over you and you're going to Carolina and all of a sudden Bryce Young or the Red Rocket gets loose?
Or are you talking about benching Dak and throwing Milton in there?
That's what's it going to take. If he's healthy and they're
I bet it would be mathematically eliminated.
Eliminated from the playoffs.
It's probably like, deeper into Thanksgiving before they would throw him out there. I just don't think you could really watch practice and think Joe Milton's better than Dak.
Not saying that. And I just said, you asked the question, if he's healthy, what does he do? And I see big things because of the weapons and that they're going to get enough from everything else.
But I'm glad you brought this up, New Bear, because I do believe there's a chance that the defense is so bad, especially if Micah is sitting out a couple of games. This could get really ugly and you could lose to the Giants. But even with Micah, the defense, the run defense, the secondary is so horrible. It's just bad. And if Diggs and Rebel can't play until week 6 or week 8, and even when they do come back, they're going to be injured. What are they of themselves? Maybe Diggs is 85% and Rebel's like 90%, but he's a rookie. So he's like half of what he's going to be. They could end up playing catch up, right? They could be down 2 touchdowns because they can only score 6 points at halftime. Again, they're down 20-6. He comes out, throws a pick. Oh no, now it's 23-6. I got to push it. Are you just going to say, hey, Dak, don't throw 20 picks this year? Okay, just go out and really play conservatively while we're down 2.5 scores here in the second half. No. You're going to be pushing the ball. So, I think with high picks, with losses, I think it could be unavoidable that by the end of the year, we're genuinely talking about moving on from Dak and considering where Joe Milton lies in this. And I would point to 2016 again, because coming into that, it was going to be Romo, and then he gets hurt in preseason. Dak's playing well, but up until week 6, week 7, it was assumed Tony's going to come back and take this job. And then all of a sudden, boom. He's in the atrium in Valley Ranch with an impromptu "I'm done" retirement press conference all of a sudden. It was crazy. And all of that unfolded within 10 weeks of total time. So it's definitely very precedented.
Well, that's where the bye week conversation becomes so prescient, because it's 10 weeks. It's 9 games and it's 10 weeks. And that's ahead of the gauntlet, weeks 12 through 17. And what I'm thinking about now is how bad this cornerback room might be, not just the defense in and of itself, but specifically the lack of potential takeaways for an Eberflus defense that in his 7 main seasons he's produced 6 top 10 turnovers, right? So if Dak's going out and turning the ball over because he's having to push it because they're down and they can't get it back, the opposite is also true. If they're not taking things away and the other team is just going up and down the field and you're in shootouts, it's the same type of scenario where you're going to be put in a position more often than not to either have to make a play or make a mistake. And if he's here in a place where even if he's playing well, I don't think if he's going out there throwing for 285 and 2.5 and these league leading type of numbers, even if it's just box score fantasy football counting stats and their losses, if he's healthy and he's putting those up, even if they're hollow, he's still the man.
He is. And we got 22 days till Cowboys Eagles. You'll listen to it on 105.3 The Fan Thursday Night Football. Cannot wait. How about Wow? Brought to you by our friends at Bet Online. Fastest payouts guaranteed. Best online sports book in the world. A+ rating review. Unmatched game integrity. And not only do they have the sports, which I love, New Bear, for year-round sports wagering, but they also got the ponies. You can bet casino games. And of course, I love poker and poker tournaments and cash games. They got all that waiting for you at Bet Online. But anyway, link in the description, up to a $250 in bonus bets if you sign up there with us here at How About Wow. You can get all of our written words, our latest videos, and our socials at howboutwow.com. Anything else before we let them go, buddy?
Just what's really cool about this is that you talk about entertainment, right? And the scripted, is Roger Goodell really writing the scripts, and how much WWE is there to the NFL with refs and Taylor Swift and all the things. What is fascinating about this Cowboys team is that whatever you're hoping for or whatever you're terrified of, whatever you want to see or you're afraid of behind door number 3, like literally everything is possible right now, based on the injury gods, based on fumble luck, there are just questions that abound. And what I come back to is the clip that you showed for the first couple weeks of us doing this, where Dak's getting punched in the mouth over and over and over again. And he's throwing these bad balls, even on the sideline, into what he thinks is single coverage. And there's a Ken Griffey Jr. center fielder safety coming over to just say, "Not today, my friend." And I just think about George Pickens. I think so much of this comes back to 3. I think 4 + 3 = 7 is the math we all want to talk about. Forget the $60 million man. Forget Joe Milton at 3.2 for 3 years, buying you a kick of that can, and just hope and say your little, prayers to the football gods every night before you go to bed.
I love that.
Those go balls, right? The dictating to the coverage that if we get that from this guy paired with CeeDee Lamb, paired with Ferguson back to crash test. I mean, now all of a sudden you're back to the momentum of, why isn't this so scary? How can we mitigate Diggs and Revel, etc.? How can we get excited again about those first 9 weeks into the week 10 bye, where we're talking about controlling our own destiny?
And I love that because, we haven't seen a player like Pickens opposite Lamb for Dak Prescott. And maybe that does open up the passing game even when they're in cover 2 shells. Maybe you don't need a running game. Maybe Dak can have confidence. I'm going to throw it into that area, and George Pickens is going to make me right. And I think that's real hope, because that is a different dynamic than what we've seen. I saw Gallup, Cooper, and Lamb with Jake Ferguson or Dalton Schultz. I've seen a lot of weapons, and I think it looked really good when you had Zeke and Tony Pollard. They combined for about 1,700 yards rushing that year. That was a really good offense, and I think Tyron Smith was pretty dang healthy. It was still a younger Zach Martin, so it's possible. Can you do it without a run game? I don't think so, but I sure hope to be wrong. Look for another video we have coming. Everything Jerry Jones had to say about it at the red carpet, it really defines his legacy and really the last 30 years of failure. Cannot wait for that. Really a landmark media session from Jerry, and I can't wait to give you our thoughts on that. Until then, how about wow?